The pulsing heartbeat of a dazzling skyline. The frenetic energy of a desert strip that welcomes more than 38 million visitors per year. The opulence that transports you to a fantasy world of elegance and illusion. Welcome to Las Vegas.
Vegas is just one of a kind.
When people see it, they're absolutely fascinated with it.
And what's not to be fascinated by? Cruise down Las Vegas Boulevard and take in some of the most astonishing architecture in the world. Enter a casino and uncover the subtle influences designed to enhance your game. Venture beyond the velvet rope into the world of Vegas's elite, the high roller. Dare to discover what it takes to build a new property in Sin City. Vegas is unlike any other city on Earth. It constantly evolves to offer new, more glamorous, more opulent, more outrageous experiences for its visitors. And the ultimate escape from reality starts on the Strip.
The Strip is just the most amazing stretch of road, I think, probably anywhere in the world.
Almost 4.5 miles long, the Las Vegas Strip boasts more than 20 high-rise hotels and casinos, more than 75 restaurants, and more than 130,000 hotel rooms. From the beginning, Vegas was specifically designed to entice visitors. Property owners in Las Vegas calculated the odds on what would draw people to the Strip. The result? Las Vegas is a chameleon, reinventing itself every few years, in a constant effort to offer the newest attractions to lure people in.
The architecture on the Strip is obviously the most eclectic in the world.
The changes we're going through now, the amount of new thinking, is absolutely incredible.
Just over 150 years ago, Las Vegas was nothing more than a settlement for Mormon missionaries. With the arrival of the railroad, Las Vegas evolved into an industry town until the 1940s, when everything changed. 1946, the war was over, the prosperity of the 1950s was just around the corner, and businessman Benjamin Bugsy Siegel unveiled a plan to transform the desert town of Las Vegas into an oasis of entertainment in the heart of Nevada. Las Vegas was the ideal resort town. Just 270 miles from Los Angeles, it was the perfect glamorous and glitzy getaway for celebrities and California's wealthy elite. Siegel plunged $6 million into the construction of the Flamingo Hotel. It was billed as the most luxurious hotel in the world. Over the next 50 years, more than 45 hotels and resorts opened and closed on the Strip, each one more lavish than the last. Until 1989, when Las Vegas experienced a second renaissance that would forever transform the Strip into one of outlandish excess.
Las Vegas changed from old to new in 1989 when Steve Wynn opened the Mirage. From that point, I mean, it was like somebody flipped a switch, and old Vegas was gone and new Vegas began.
It was a 5-star quality hotel, big volcano out in front, live dolphins and white tigers in their showrooms and out by the pools. And it was an experience that was totally unique and totally new. From that point on, everybody tried to play catch up.
The Mirage Hotel raised the stakes for casino owners and architects. The race was on to develop the best digs on the Strip.
The competition is very fierce. Everybody's raising the bar.
It really is an effort to just keep coming up with the latest and greatest. The old adage of if they build it, they will come. That's happened in Las Vegas, and so far, there hasn't been a loser yet.
Today, architects have upped the ante. The aesthetic in hotel architecture has evolved from themed properties towards more sophisticated designs.
I want to create something that hadn't been created before, something that was different from a big themed mega resort. We want to make sure that we didn't replicate something that existed someplace else. So we were very particular about creating something that had its own style.
Not only have the design concepts shifted, the source for hotel revenue in recent years has changed.
In the old days, the idea was the casino will make the money. Everything else must be a loss leader to bring you into the casino. Today, it's by having the better amenities in general.
In previous years, casinos were responsible for 53% of a hotel's revenue. Today, that number has dropped to around 40%.
When it switched from loss leader to better amenities, then the whole model kind of changed. That you didn't have to make all your money only in the casino.
Today, we have the most incredible shopping. We have the most incredible theater. We have the most incredible restaurants and chefs.
I'd like a table for one. I hear your risotto is tremendous.
It is tremendous.
There isn't anything in the world that you can see that doesn't exist in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, at least on the Strip, it's almost like a Hollywood movie set. These casinos are built, they serve their purpose for a time, and then they're torn down. In cities like New York or in Chicago, or especially cities in Europe, as buildings and hotels get older, they seem to get more and more cachet. But in Las Vegas, as they get older, they get passé. People want to go to the new, fresh place and whatever's more exciting.
The Landmark, the Dunes, the Aladdin, all demolished less than 40 years after opening on the Strip.
Where are you going to build a 30-story hotel tower anywhere else in the world and implode it? It just is unheard of.
The Las Vegas skyline evolves. The Las Vegas skyline morphs. But the Las Vegas skyline has yet to go bust.
I have in my office a Life magazine cover framed on my wall.
Its headline from 1955 was, "Is Las Vegas overbuilt?"
I have it on my wall to remind me, boy, how wrong those people were back then. As long as Las Vegas is able to keep reinventing itself, I don't think we'll ever get overbuilt.
Lush and lavish is the name of the game in Las Vegas. At the pools, in the restaurants, inside swank suites, Vegas conjures up images of sumptuous retreat. However, the most iconic symbol of Las Vegas is the casino. Gaming in Las Vegas is an $8 billion a year industry. Vegas was originally known as a haven of mob activity. But by the 1950s, casinos cleaned up their act, and tourists flocked to Las Vegas to enjoy the glamour and fantasy of the casino.
Las Vegas functions on a 24-hour-a-day schedule. Its principal attraction, gambling, does around-the-clock business.
In the past decade, over 45% of hotel revenue in Las Vegas has been bankrolled by the casino.
I'm experienced within the casino for as long as possible with many, many techniques.
All the action makes the player feel like they have a fighting chance, if you understand my meaning.
The more time a person spends in a casino, the more money the casino can potentially collect.
Everything the casinos do is tactically based. They've run tests that tell them what they can do to make it more fun, make people stay longer, make people loosen up. Everything has a reason behind it.
These techniques are sophisticated, subtle, and often undetectable to casino patrons.
Or our pedestrian movements are on the basis of a curve. If you step into one of our buildings and look left and look right, and you've seen it all, well, there's no reason for you to explore it. We would hope that you would have the feeling that you didn't see the entire facility and you'd want to come back again.
I'm always amazed for somebody who's inside tells me that they've done this and that for this purpose. I go, you gotta be kidding me.
Designers also play their hand with casino lighting. It's not enough to turn the lights on. Those lights must radiate the proper color and temperature to further the fantasy of the casino.
We use a principle by an architect named Morris Lapidus. Morris had this principle, he called it the Moth Principle, that all the customers go to the light as a moth does. It's a little bit like that in a casino. In our lighting design, we really want that customer to feel stronger, look better, look taller, and be empowered. Our lighting must make you look and feel fantastic.
With the lighting concept in place, designers then tackle table layout.
We need to have the tables in the right spots to in fact energize that casino. Youthful people want to gather with other youthful people. So consequently, they're put around bars or lounges or nightclubs or special event type places.
Casino designers are in tune with all five senses. Sound is one of the most effective tools in the psychology of casino design.
The sounds in a casino do a few things. They sort of disarm people a little bit. You know, they hear the noise and they think, well, there's a party and I think I ought to get involved.
In fact, in the days when slot machines were still doling out coins, some were designed to sound like they were dropping more coins, creating the impression of a bigger payout. Casino design can be a gamble. While designers strive to create a sense of energy and involvement, they are also keen on creating intimate spaces for the gambler.
Lower ceilings are better than high ceilings in terms of inducing people to want to play or stay and play.
As gaming progressed through this particular century, in order to garner a personal relationship, the ceilings were required or desired to be low.
Cleverness is the key to casino design. For these strategies to pay off, they must be imperceptible to casino customers.
As a player and somebody who played a lot, I don't notice things like that. Only the casinos really understand that they're doing it, so it's pretty subtle.
We are definitely not trying to trap anyone in a casino. If you are not comfortable, you will stay a shorter time. Shorter visits mean less money, less profits. It's like a ripple effect.
People have to realize casinos are businesses. And just the same as when you go to a restaurant or to a department store, you're going to encounter tactics to get you to spend more, order more. Same thing goes on in a casino.
I got 18 whales.
Las Vegas is on such a roll right now that there's no stopping it.
No matter where you go, there's always a lot happening. It's a different scene wherever you go.
Vegas is Sin City and it's cool.
Las Vegas is extravagance. Las Vegas is opulence. It is the ultimate fantasy. It's the stunning shows, first-class chefs, and draw of the game that makes Las Vegas the high-life capital of the world. And nowhere is this more evident than in the world of the high roller. For the select few with unlimited spending potential, Vegas opens up some unbelievable doors.
If you're a big player, and a really big player, you can expect the world.
When Bugsy Siegel ran the show, high rollers enjoyed placing a few bets, taking in some shows, and relaxing in style. By the 1960s, big gamblers could rub elbows with the Rat Pack after an evening at the table. Today, it's a whole different game. Vegas's elite are flown in on private jets, put up in lavish rooms, and offered access to some of the most exclusive acts in town, all on the casino's dime.
A high roller in Vegas terms is anyone that'll risk $50,000 to $250,000 on a weekend. And a whale is $250,000 and up.
It's the surge of adrenaline, the thrill of the wager, and the risk of losing big that lures these daredevils to the gaming table.
It doesn't matter what level they're at or what age they're at, they all want that rush of winning.
The largest bet I ever made was on craps, where I've had in excess of $150,000 on the table. It makes you feel alive. It gives you a certain energy and an electricity. There's no drug in the world that could give you that same feeling.
These whales don't negotiate the treacherous waters of Las Vegas on their own. They enlist a casino host to handle their every need.
My name is Steve Sear, and I'm an independent casino host. My clients are casinos, my customers are gamblers. So I'm hired by the casino to bring in gamblers. I have more $100,000 players under 40 than over 40. If a guy doesn't put up at least $25,000 to gamble with, I usually don't return the call.
Dropping up to $500,000 in a weekend makes a whale a hot commodity to the casino. To keep their business, casinos' comping extends far beyond the gaming table.
If you want it and you're worth enough to them, they'll get it for you.
Buying them Rolls Royces, giving them access to private jets to bring them into Las Vegas from all over the world, sending their girlfriends shopping for mink coats and diamonds.
Too cold Super Bowl Sunday. I want to go to the Super Bowl. I got them 50-yard line, third row, and I got them a skybox.
When you're a big player at a casino, you're treated like royalty. And no matter what anybody tells you, it's entertaining.
I would walk into a restaurant, if it was full, they'd snap out a new table for me like that.
Maybe you lost 10 grand, but you know what? You took your girl to Celine Dion, and afterwards I surprised you and you got to go in the back and meet her.
Once the final card is dealt, high rollers are treated to suites beyond imagination. Taking a dip on the 30th floor, grooving to state-of-the-art entertainment systems, rolling a strike, and shooting some hoops. Just another night for a Vegas whale.
Brad Pitt, he's a star in Hollywood. You know what's great is these people are stars in Vegas.
Giving away $25,000 a night suites, comping private planes, and coordinating extravagant entertainment may seem outrageous. But for the casinos, it's good business sense.
Everything that's given away to the customer is provided at the casino's expense. They take a look at what they're giving away and they get a total here, and they take a look at what they think they can make from you, they look at these two numbers. This number that they can win has to be bigger than this number that they're giving away.
As a business person, would you spend $100 grand to make $2 million?
Whenever I've lost big, I always take consolation in the fact that at least I took a shot at it. You got to take shots in life, and if you never take a shot, then you can never win.
My most rewarding thing is when a guy loses $100 grand, shakes my hand and says, God, I had a great time. What's the next event?
I remember when this used to be the dunes. Sands was there, Desert Inn. They built them a lot smaller back then. They seemed pretty big. Town's changed.
Las Vegas is the most dynamic environment in the country.
When they build a new place, it's supposed to be fancier and crazier and wilder than the one before it.
We're going to see some interesting days ahead of us because we're definitely getting into some more serious architecture.
Las Vegas is the city of many faces. Once the home to exquisite resorts for rat packers, by the early 1990s, it evolved into a strip of over-the-top themed mega resorts. However, the future of architecture in Las Vegas is transitioning yet again. In 1970, over 6.5 million people descended on Las Vegas. Today, almost 6 times as many people make Vegas a vacation destination.
Hello, Sam. Sorry for the wait. Welcome to the bank.
With that much demand, there's a booming market for new construction on Las Vegas Boulevard. Currently, over 60 new projects are on the drawing board, totaling more than $15 billion.
Everywhere you look, there's some sort of activity. You either see a gigantic sign, or you see crowds of people, or you see construction because they're making another big place. So, I mean, there's just no downtime on the Strip.
But with Las Vegas Boulevard seemingly saturated, is there room for another property?
You think the Strip is so compact. You think it's filled, but it's not. There's still open spaces, and there's cranes in those spaces because they're building. And when those places get up, you'll say, all right, that's it. The Strip is full. It's finished. Next thing you know, there'll be another tower going up.
Las Vegas is a city that has been evolving for 30 plus years. When you look at the Strip, it's representative of this lengthy period of history. What Las Vegas is evolving to is something that is more design-oriented.
The newest properties on the Strip promise to be a radical departure from typical Vegas architecture.
I think that a lot of the operators now are figuring that we're themed out. And it doesn't have to be themed. It just has to be something that evokes some kind of feeling that I'm going to have a good time here.
I got the hottest new hotel, and I'm a shoe-in for the 5-time award.
Constructing properties like these on a stretch of land less than 5 miles long presents numerous obstacles for engineers and architects.
There are lots of aesthetic challenges. Of course, creating something new. It's like, designing a movie or writing a screenplay. We are always trying to do something that will create immediate fame.
Necessity is the mother of invention. Whatever the property's constraints were, gave rise to what I'm going to call the solutions.
The complexities of these projects are almost like a Rubik's Cube. There's so many pieces and parts that have to come together, and just when you think you have them solved, you find out another piece doesn't work.
Las Vegas, it's land constrained. It's a small valley that has one famous street. That street is under tremendous pressure to utilize the land to the greatest value. The genius of the architecture, which will be in these newer buildings, will in fact be how do we create suburban experiences in or within an urban fabric.
From awe-inspiring architecture to the casino's strategies to keep players in the game, Vegas is a city that lavishes glamour on its visitors, offering an opulent escape and a chance to break from reality. It's one of the fastest-growing cities in the United States. Each month, 7,000 new people make Sin City their home. In a town where risk can be rewarded, what's in the cards for Las Vegas's future?
The city is an incredible city. The city itself is definitely becoming more urban, and it's becoming more dense. I think we're going to see more and more people wanting to come here and be here.
The amount of risk-taking is just absolutely at an all-time high. People are not being safe anymore. People are taking the ultimate risks, and these buildings will show it in the future. They will be phenomenal projects that will encapsulate everyone's imagination.
Vegas is empowering. You see Vegas and you watch it, all the glitz and glamour, and you come here and it's all of it and more.
The future's exciting for Vegas. We've still got a long way to go. And as long as we keep coming up with fresh ideas and we stay innovative, Las Vegas will always be the #1 tourist destination in the world.
Never say never for life.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Jerry Weintraub, producer of Oceans 11, 12, and now 13, many other films. But this is my proudest one, and I'm really excited about taking you on a personal VIP tour of this set. So come with me. We're going to turn the camera around and show you something that I think is pretty special and pretty incredible. And this is the Bank Casino, which is Willie Bank's casino in Las Vegas. Willie Bank is Al Pacino. And the Ocean's gang gets together and has to knock off this casino. They have to rob the casino. Oh, it's Asian themed because there is no casino that we know of in Las Vegas that's Asian, so we decided to have an Asian theme. We have a Chinese restaurant in the top, Ling Shu. We have a bar over here. And then this is the desk where you check in. And we have a working area back there. I mean, there are computers, and just like they have in Las Vegas. And this hotel actually could be open and be a working casino. And then this is the floor of the casino. And we have all the games that they have in Las Vegas, and every detail is real. All the tables work, all the machines work. We have everything. We did not leave any details out of this film. And you'll see it all in Ocean's 13, so don't miss it. These tiles have Bernie Mac's picture on them, as you can see. And we use this in the film. And when the robbery takes place, Bernie's right here, Brad Pitt's up there, George Clooney's up there, Elliot Gould's over there, and the rest of the guys are spread through the casino. George Clooney was right here, and I was right here. We spent many days here at this table. And Brad was over there at that table. And then we shot the dice down. The audience says 7. I never miss. And right now, I'm going to dinner. So I want to thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed the tour. I enjoyed your seeing this. And I really am going to enjoy when you pay your money to go to the movie. See you later.
The following 4 stories are true. A middle-aged woman enters an upscale jewelry store while waiting for a friend. After trying on several pieces, she notices the time, says goodbye to the clerk, and walks out. In Las Vegas, Nevada, a group of college students looking to let off a little steam decide to take a weekend trip to Vegas. They gamble, enjoy a steak dinner, and 48 hours later, they are back in class. On the SS Vancouver, an Italian immigrant looking for the American dream arrives in the U.S. and finds it. And on St. Patrick's Day in Boston, 2 police officers responding to a disturbance call arrive at a local art museum to investigate. These seemingly ordinary, everyday events are not what they appear to be. The woman walked out of the store wearing a stolen $30,000 diamond ring. The students were professional card counters who took the casinos for millions. The immigrant used an elaborate scheme to trick people out of their money. And the 2 police officers were actually art thieves who pulled off the largest art heist in American history. The woman, the students, the immigrant, and the police officers are what we call masters of the heist. Confidence men, grifters, charlatans, and cheats. There are many names, but these characters have been pulling one scam or another for as long as one can remember. The scores are big, the heists are clever, and the hustlers are larger than life.
Well, you know, a confidence man, the reason they're called con men, short for confidence, is that they inspire confidence in others. And they do have that feeling of giving something to you. There's always that trust that you feel they've trusted you first. That's where it comes from. And your people who are confidence guys really do have that skill of talking and engaging people.
Every guy that goes to work every day and gets a paycheck at the end of the week wants to hit it big and not do that. And this is the dream.
People want to get a little bit more than what everybody else is getting. They think, I finally found the opportunity. I have the opportunity no one else has, and I'm going to make money off of it, and I'm going to be okay.
Charles Ponzi came to this country in search of the American dream. Within months of starting his business, he was the toast of the town, taking in over $10 million. How did Ponzi do it? Well, here's how. This is Charles Ponzi. He had a great idea.
I've got a great idea.
And he tells everyone he knows about it.
Step right up. If you give me money, in 45 days, I give you 50% more. I guarantee it.
And the money starts rolling in. But soon, the investors come knocking at his door.
Hey, Ponzi, where's our money?
Where's our money? Ponzi, where's our money? Hey, Ponzi, where's our money?
But does he have their money?
Sure, I got your money.
Sure he does. And word travels fast.
Unbelievable! It works!
One person tells his friends, who tell their friends, and soon people young and old, rich and poor flock to Ponzi. Even the original investors put their money back in. Now, Ponzi is on top of the world. Mr. Ponzi, what is your secret?
Here's what I do. I buy foreign stamps and convert them into American dollars.
Tisk, Ponzi. Isn't it true? There is no real investment? Aren't you just using money from your new investors to pay your old investors?
You are correct. It's true.
Silly Ponzi. What you don't realize is that your pyramid is growing too big. Soon, you won't be able to bring in enough new investors to pay your old ones. And the weight of the pyramid will be too much for them to bear. And like all Ponzi schemes, it will collapse. And that is the birth of the Ponzi scheme.
7 months in 1920, almost $10 million was invested by 30,000 investors. And many of them were Italian immigrants, just like Ponzi himself. They trusted him. They said, he's got to be telling the truth. The money's being paid out. But a local newspaper exposed it, and the scheme was about to collapse. And it's hard to believe this, but investors still believed. They wouldn't give up. They said, this is our savior. He's made us money. He's making us money. This is a good thing. Meanwhile, the scheme was unraveling, and 7 months after his scheme began, Carlo Ponzi was arrested, he was convicted, he went to jail, he was deported to Italy, and he died with $50 to his name.
You cannot believe how much people want to believe that these Ponzi schemes are real.
I don't think you can blame the people in a Ponzi scheme for wanting to better themselves. I think it's the criminals that do that.
Ponzi schemes are more prevalent today than they've ever been in history because of the internet. Just thousands of them.
The internet makes it easier for everyone. It makes it easier, it makes it faster, it makes it cheaper for anyone to perpetrate a Ponzi scheme from their basement. But it's also easier for us to track.
And I would rather live in a world where computers were wide open and everybody left their doors unlocked. That's the world I want to live in. And if I want to live in that world, one of the things I have to do is not celebrate people who violate society's trust.
People make a living cheating at gaming. That's what they do for a living, and we have people who've been on our file for over 20 years.
Blackjack is the last casino game that can be beaten legally. Card counting is actually a science, a skill, and an art. With enough time and effort, anyone can do it as long as they practice and train. The toughest thing with counting cards, though, is putting your money on the line.
From 1994 to 2000, one group of students has been winning millions counting cards in Las Vegas. They are known simply as...
1962, that's when Ed Thorpe wrote Beat the Dealer. At the time, he was a professor at MIT.
What Ed Thorpe did by writing the book is he informed people that if they're smart enough, they study enough, they can beat the game at 21. Nobody can beat casino games, but here's a game that can be beaten.
So there wasn't any new knowledge, but what we were really good at was executing it and applying it.
Welcome to the basics of card counting. In a casino, blackjack is different from all other games because as the cards are dealt, the odds are constantly changing. Now there are two important things you need to know about blackjack. Low cards are bad and high cards are good. With more high cards, a player is more likely to get blackjack, while the dealer is more likely to bust. The way you keep track of the difference is by using what we call the point count system. No matter how many decks, there's always an equal number of high and low cards. So low cards are each worth +1, while the high cards are worth -1. The more high cards that come out, the lower the count, and it's time to leave the table. The more low cards that are dealt, the higher the count is, and it's time to bet big. Now that seems like simple mathematics, but how fast can you count?
And the count is?
0.
0, that's right.
The way our team operated in the casinos is that we would have a big player, such as myself, and then I would play with spotters. Now the role of the spotters, they were supposed to just keep track of the net difference of high cards and low cards. And they would either just watch the tables or they would sit down at the table and bet, table minimum.
And the spotter's goal, if the table wasn't hot, they would get up and go to the next table. Their goal is to find, keep dipping their toe in and find the hot table. And when a table would get hot, they'd signal in a nonverbal signal. The spotter would signal the count to the big player. The big player would come in, swoop in and start dropping the big bets. When you practice in a controlled environment, you kind of get in a comfort zone where when you then go to a casino, if you're not trained with all the outside things going on, casino hosts coming up to you, other players talking to you, cocktail waitresses asking you your drink order, it's a new ball game for you. So
once the big player was called into a hot shoot, a spotter at that point would then pass off the count using a code word. Like, for example, 8 was skate. I gotta skate out of here.
Well, guys, I think I'm gonna skate.
So then at that point, the big player would know that the count was +8. Using the big player spotter approach, it had several advantages. One is just the efficiency, because if you're playing by yourself, you can only sample like 4 or 5 shoes maybe an hour. Whereas if a big player goes in with 4 spotters, now you can count down up to 20 tables an hour because the spotters aren't tied down to any table. They can, float about. Another big advantage of the strategy we used is it provided a natural camouflage. Because if, I got called into a table and started betting big, the casinos would think, well, there's no way he's counting cards because he just walked up to the table. When I first started playing as a big player and was winning, the casinos didn't seem to mind too much because they know, that even the average gambler is going to win sometimes. But it was the consistency of the winning. So it was after, 10 trips, they might look at my record and say, hey, he should have lost 100,000 and he's won 200,000. This doesn't add up. So, that's one of the challenges for a professional card counter, because if you're really good at what you do, you're going to win. And ultimately, no matter how well you fool the casino, that win is what's going to get the casino, on your set.
I really don't think that most people are that much aware how many cameras there are and that all the things that are being watched. And certainly if you're not doing anything wrong, it's of no importance to you. Nobody's going to save a picture of your Aunt Maud in her plaid shorts, because if she's walking through the lobby, nobody cares. But if she lands on a table and she starts fooling around with the cards, then somebody's going to have a picture of Aunt Maud, and they're going to want to know what's she up to.
What we do is very different from people who actually cheat and actually use outside information or tools or markers or whatever it is. What we do is completely legal. We're using information that is available to everybody at the table, and we're not altering the game in any way.
A lot of people hold the cheater and the card counter on the same level. I don't look at card counting as cheating.
Gaming many years ago made the decision that if you're using your brain to count cards, that it's not illegal. However, since that time, card counting has taken on a whole new face, and they have teams and groups of card counters, whereas one person counts the cards, and the other person then comes and they bet large amounts of money. Now, these people that are signaled into the game have not counted cards, and they have information that's not available to the other people on the table.
If it wasn't for card counting, I doubt blackjack would be as big as it is today.
There's a book that keeps undesirable people that the casinos don't want in.
And they always put us on the top row of each page of the book. We're kind of the poster child of the casino undesirables.
We would pass out pictures of this is who was out, and this is who was about, and sure enough, you'd take them and show up to the people in the pit, and they'd go, that's, yes.
When we finally saw some of these flyers, these investigative flyers on some of the people, it was actually one of Mike. It was a great picture, and we kind of were joking. Did you pose for this picture? And he looked at it and he said, "Oh, that's my yearbook photo."
The yearbooks out of MIT were a great deal helpful. Had some marvelous pictures of these people looking all bright and shiny and studious.
In reaction to when the casino started catching on, we kind of modified our strategy. We actually went to what we call the signaling guerrilla big player strategy. Now with that strategy, we actually would have two players sitting at the table at the same time. We'd have the signaler who'd still be betting table minimum, and through different signals that we had, they would be controlling the guerrilla big player and telling him how much to bet and how to play his hand. And so a guerrilla big player was someone who actually didn't keep track of the count at all. You know, they were just simply taking signals. And it worked well because since he wasn't actually keeping track of the count, he could really concentrate on his act and, you know, really make it apparent that he wasn't keeping track of the count. So in terms of the amount of money we could win on a weekend, it could range from $10,000 to $20,000 to, you know, our best weekend ever was we won $500,000. You know, it's not a guarantee you're going to win at any one short trip, but, you know, over the long run, we knew that we were going to come out way ahead. You know, professional blackjack's a cash business, so we're always carrying around large amounts.
You do get used to strapping a couple $100,000 onto your body and walking through security, but at the same time, when you win $500,000 and you brought $500,000 out there to play with originally, and you're trying to haul back $1 million in cash, that's a little cumbersome. We get asked a lot, how much money did we win over the years? You know, the number is somewhere up in the range of about $10 million.
I think for most of us, just having the opportunity to go on these great trips, live the life, you know, of a high roller and bet big money, I mean, that was a pretty easy sell for a college kid.
To be college kids doing our thing and being able to put together a scheme, the teams, and all the preparation that we put into it, it's kind of nice. It's kind of impressive looking back on it.
The team play is happening now. It's never stopped. At all times, there's something going on. Wherever there's money, there's usually people trying to get their fingers on it.
She said, "I have $1 million story to tell you. Let's write a book together." Doris Payne is a 75-year-old black woman who has spent the last 50 years walking into jewelry stores, charming the clerk into bringing out several pieces, and she will just walk out with a diamond ring right on her hand, right under the clerk's nose. She's a coal miner's daughter from West Virginia who grew up youngest of 6 kids. And her first incident was when she was 13 years old, and her mother had sent her down to the general store to pay down their account. So she went in and was telling Mr. Benjamin, oh, if I get good grades this semester, my mom's gonna buy me a watch. And so he brought out the watch case and started letting her try them on, treated her like a little lady. She was having a great time. And then another man walked into the store, and Mr. Benjamin hastily put away the watches, kind of pushed her to the front of the store, and she realized she still had a watch on that he had forgotten. And so she very deliberately turned around and said, oh, Mr. Benjamin, you forgot this watch. And that was it. She figured out that she could do this. Doris Payne has 22 aliases, including Louise Davis, Thelma Louise Creighton, many others that she used all throughout Europe. She would go to Cartier in Paris, Bulgari in Rome, Her Royal Majesty's jeweler in London, and take whatever she wanted. She said she would subscribe to Town and Country magazine, pick out a piece of jewelry that she saw in an ad, and she would fly to that store to look at that particular piece of jewelry and walk out with it. As a black woman, her race was not an issue. In fact, it was an asset over in Europe. So she found it much easier to move around among the high society. She called it dressing up. And sometimes it would take her weeks or even a month to get ready to do something. And she'd kind of immerse herself in this society in preparation for stealing a jewel. Her shoes and her handbags were the most important piece of what she was wearing, and I don't know if you'd even say she would charm the clerks. I think she learned to just play off of them, and the less she would tell them, the better. The more she would let them assume who she was and the type of money she had, the better it was.
She had a personality that would ultimately get people to let their guard down by her conversation, changing the subject away from the things that she was contemplating buying to maybe talking about baseball or any number of things that she'd want to discuss, just taking people off guard.
She called it organized confusion that she could create, where she would mimic what the clerk was doing. If the clerk was moving rings from one finger to another, Doris would do the same.
She could move things with her hands so that it was hardly noticeable. In most cases, not noticeable at all, obviously. So she was very talented. Most of the time, she could distract people in such a way that they had no clue of what was going on.
But she never concealed the rings or the bracelet or whatever piece of jewelry it was. And usually it was a ring, because she would just put it right on her finger and walk out the door and disappear. Sometimes head straight to the airport and leave the state or the country. The FBI has estimated probably 400 jewel thefts over a 50-year career. The biggest ring she ever took was the one in Monte Carlo. She walked into the Cartier store in Monte Carlo and asked the clerk to bring out several different rings for her to look at. And she says, well, you know, I ended up walking out of the store with a 10.5 carat diamond ring, which is huge. A 10 carat diamond ring would go from knuckle to knuckle.
I mean, most eyes in the facility you would think would be glued on anything that valuable, but obviously they let their guard down and away she went.
And she hopped into a cab, went straight to the airport in Nice, and was arrested there. And that's where the game began of concealing this ring from the authorities who were investigating her. Eventually, they ended up moving her to what she describes as like a fifth-rate motel in Monte Carlo because they didn't really have a jail to put her in. And they kept her there, and they searched her room at all hours of the day and night trying to find this ring. And she had asked one of the clerks of the hotel for a needle and thread. She said she'd torn the hem of her dress. So she took the stone out of its setting and sewed the diamond into her girdle. But then she took Kleenex and whip-stitched buttons so that they all looked and felt the same. So that if someone ran their hands over the girdle, you wouldn't be able to tell that she'd sewn the diamond in there. And for 9 months, they kept her under arrest doing this investigation. But she did say to me that, strangely, it was some of the most enjoyable months of her life. She was in a room with a balcony overlooking the Mediterranean. She could hear the nightlife of Monte Carlo. She was able to order from the restaurant downstairs, so she would eat fabulous meals every night. She said, the French can season a chicken like no one else. After 9 months, they never found the ring. So the investigation was over. They put her on a plane back to New York, and she kissed the ground when she got there and headed straight to the Diamond District in New York City and got rid of the diamond. So she says.
I'd been in and out of the museum many times, and many times I sat outside the museum at night to essentially get an idea of what they had for security, and they didn't have a whole lot.
Oh, he's a criminal. Make no mistake, Miles will tell you he's a criminal. He's an outlaw.
Really, you know, up until the 90s, I mean, he was still the first guy you thought of when an art theft happened.
It was decided the best way to go in there and take it down was essentially to go in there masquerading as two police officers.
The gardener basically had given over nighttime security to a couple of college kids who were interested in art.
It was, as they would say in the underworld, an easy score, a piece of cake.
Relax, gentlemen. This is a robbery.
The cardinal rule is never to let anybody into the museum, but I guess they didn't realize that this could be a robbery.
Boom, once you're in, it's all over. The first thing they do is disable the security stuff. You know, you pull some plugs out. They grabbed one of the cassettes that would have shown what they look like. And then they basically had the run of the place for, it would have been till dawn, presumably.
There were 5 pictures taken. There was Rembrandt's only seascape, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, an extraordinary Vermeer called The Concert, and a portrait of a couple by Rembrandt, and then a Flink landscape. Also a Manet called Chez Tortoni. There were 5 Degas works on paper, a sketch of Rembrandt's, a self-portrait, and then, of course, this Chinese coup and a finial from a Napoleonic flag. The theft to me and to the community and actually to the world at large is a crime against civilization. It's removing extraordinary works of culture from our history, from our capacity to experience them. If you were to never be able to see Shakespeare's Hamlet again, or if you were never able to hear Beethoven's Ninth Symphony because it was sucked out of our heritage, what would that do to civilization? Well, it's the same with removing Rembrandt's only religious seascape, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, one of Vermeer's few remaining pictures. These are treasures that belong as part of civilization, and to remove them is to remove a piece of our humanity. And I think if the people that did this understood that, they might be interested in seeing these returned. I don't think they understood what they were doing. I really don't.
The items that I had planned on taking were not all the items that they took, but were certainly some of the items that they took.
Miles was in jail in Chicago at the time of the robbery at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. They woke Miles up in a cell. They verified his identification card and his fingerprints to make sure that Miles Connor was locked up and had not perpetrated that robbery, because he was then the #1 suspect and remained as the #1 suspect for a long period of time, even though he had been incarcerated.
We have the largest art theft in the history of the United States, and we have no suspects in jail. We've had a lot of leads that have been faithfully followed out by the FBI.
And not one thing has been recovered, not one.
The Gardner crime always intrigued me because, it sort of came and went from the headlines pretty quickly. I mean, I had looked at our old clips on it, and it was like major heist hits museum, and then, these kind of, the years rolled by, and there was like no leads and nothing really interesting. And I just started digging into it myself. I mean, could this guy be connected with this guy? Where was this guy at the time? You start just kind of piecing together in your mind, who might the likely suspects be? And I thought, well, I got to at least pursue this Miles Connor angle. So I went up to see him, and that's where I got the first tale, where he really laid out the story of what he thought had happened.
The people who did the crime were my friends, and I had planned the crime with them. And of course, the people that I planned the crime with were Bobby Donati and David Holden. So, yes, the museum theft was done on my idea. I had planned it with them. Then I ended up getting locked up and sent away, and they came out to Lompoc, at least David did, and told me he had done it.
The stuff that was taken was basically stashed very carefully among Miles's belongings so that he could be in control of the stuff, even from prison or once he got out.
And they were going to use one of the major pieces to get me out. Wait a little while, and then essentially say, okay, we want Miles released for this. And then when he went back, he had a heart attack and died. The other guy who was involved, he was killed, murdered.
Between the time of the heist, when they were alive, and the 7 years later, when I first got on this, they had managed to die. Houghton had a massive heart attack and keeled over, and Donati ended up, in a trunk. So that was unfortunate.
And so now, no one really knows where the paintings are.
The museum is a composition, a work of art, so of course to remove pieces from this composition makes us lose an arm. We're incomplete because they're gone. So these are just priceless, they're not replaceable, and they remain lost to the museum.
A lot of people have said it was like the blue-collar type of mentality, that they were given a list of what they should get, They did it in a very crude and Neanderthal type of way.
They just cut them out. They just basically cut them out, leaving, about this much canvas all around the perimeter, and rolled them up and took them that way.
Why they did that, I do not know. It's something that I would have never done. Over the last 20 years, the price of art has skyrocketed. There's so few Vermeers left in the world. A Vermeer alone had to be worth, I would say back then, probably $30 million. Today, it would probably be up in the $500 million.
The museum has had a reward since early in this loss, and it now is a $5 million reward that the museum offers to a person or people who can bring the work back to us.
Really, the case was kind of moribund when I kind of stumbled across it, and lo and behold, this guy Youngworth popped up in the newspapers as a guy whose place was raided, and they had found this item among his possessions that Miles Connor was known to have stolen a good 15 years earlier.
He had done a few things for me in the past so that I trusted the man. So I essentially gave him carte blanche to everything that I owned.
Obviously, the suspicion grew. The stuff could easily be among Miles's belongings, hidden away in some secret compartment, maybe rolled up in a tube and stuffed in among other tubes, looking all innocent like it was just some old poster when in fact it was a Rembrandt.
Bill Youngworth traveled to meet with Mr. Miles to try to explain away what happened to Miles' goods, and that he found something in those goods that may lead to something else.
With Miles's permission, Youngworth started saying, I have access to the art and I can arrange its return in exchange for A, B, and C. He had some demands.
And then he came to see me, and I said, I'll negotiate in your behalf and Miles' behalf. I don't want to see the property, but if you're telling me you have it at some point, you must produce something, and it must be more than a photograph.
And that's when I embarked on this late night ride where I was taken to a warehouse to view what appeared to be one of the stolen paintings. And that's obviously was a fairly exciting moment for me and also an interesting moment in the investigation of the crime. So it's a little bit eerie. You are kind of in the middle of nowhere, and it's in this kind of dark and isolated district. There's not anybody else around. And it seemed like the kind of place you might keep stolen paintings, because, who would ever think it was there? The person I was with had keys and access to the warehouse. We went in and up a few flights of stairs into one of these warehouse storage rooms where you have private access. And there was a bin that you store things in. And inside the bin, these sort of big, kind of hard cardboard tubes with little lids at both ends. And the top was taken off, and out came this painting. And the person who had it sort of held it up like this and had a flashlight, and was sort of used the flashlight to kind of show me the painting, and then sort of shined it on the Rembrandt signature. Now, obviously I'm no art expert, but it was certainly done well. And I felt afterward there was a good chance this was the real thing, because to put that much energy into a falsification, to fool me, when in the end of the day, if it's a phony, they're gonna know the first second. The experts at the museum are gonna know. It just didn't make sense to me. So that's why, at the time, I felt very confident that it was the real thing. It was exciting right afterward because obviously we got a very exciting front page headline out of it with the wonderful headline, "We've seen it," and that generated a lot of attention.
And things progressed, and we thought that there would be something turned over.
But the feds basically said, well, that's not evidence of anything. So the next step in the process was I said to Youngworth, well, how about some photographs? You know, maybe that would be more convincing. So we printed them out, we looked at them very carefully, we examined them, we showed them to art experts. But again, the reaction from law enforcement was, why should we believe these photographs are real? It's not credible. And then the third step in this little sequence was, to my mind, still the most interesting, which is when I received the paint chips, which I had independently tested. And they determined that there's no question that these were chips from the 1600s of the kind of paint used by the Dutch masters.
And if that was a legitimate lead, I'm just wondering why all of a sudden everything shut down. They gave them every opportunity in the world to produce the paintings, and there was no results.
Eventually, the U.S. Attorney said, nothing is being turned over, and that's when Youngworth backed off and I stopped negotiating.
And literally the thing just fell apart.
Whatever he showed Mashburg, I don't know. But you could be sure of one thing, that if he still had it, it would be returned for the money. I mean, $5 million is a tremendous incentive to get anyone to turn the thing in.
You know, there have been thousands of leads, and I have been through so many that I don't even get involved in them anymore because you get so excited and then there's nothing at the end of it.
So we're left with this mystery, and we don't know whether this was really an authentic opportunity to get a hold of this art that just kind of went by the wayside because there were too many conflicting, confusing interests at work, and it just never came together.
In the meantime, the Gardner case went on, and it became a curse. Miles Connor had a heart attack, lost some of his memory. The FBI agent in charge of the investigation was killed in a car accident. Another suspect, a person of interest, was shot and killed by his wife. So there's been a curse to this entire matter of the Isabella Stewart Gardner robbery, and not one thing has been recovered.
After the frames were restored, I decided we should hang them as an homage, as a statement that we are in mourning of this loss, but we also hold them open for the return of the work.
Well, I'm an optimist, and I believe that we will eventually, succeed in getting these paintings back and putting them back in the Isabella Gardner Museum where they belong.
I don't have any concrete, I can't lay my hands on the things. If I did, then needless to say, I'd be $5 million richer, and probably a couple of my friends who are locked up would be free. And so, but I unfortunately currently have no idea where they are. And that's too bad, because if I did, they'd have their paintings back.
You know, over the years, as I've thought about it, and I've seen the delays, and I've seen the, sort of the lack of progress, I just have this sneaking feeling in it that the art is just kind of lost. That somehow, somewhere along the line, they ended up, like in a trash heap, or, in some storage place where they were forgotten for a while and then disposed of, that they've just kind of been lost to the sands of time. I mean, that's sort of my fear.
If the Stone of the Sea Galilee was rolled up and Youngworth had it, it's gone. If the Man and Woman in Black, Rembrandt, was rolled up and Youngworth's possession, gone. If the self-portrait, which is rather small, and Youngworth said that he'll burn it and film it and send it to the newspapers, nobody has seen that. We'll never know. Maybe.
The con man, the swindler, the hustler, the thief. These masters of the heist are out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to take advantage of their next unsuspecting victim. And if you think you can't be conned, think again.
As a young man growing up, my father said, you have to remember that in the business that we're in, people want what we have. So treat every single person that comes through the door as being guilty until they prove otherwise.
Beware of opportunities that are today only. There's no opportunity that's a today only opportunity. Every opportunity that makes sense, every opportunity that's credible is one that you can sleep on. Sleep on it, think about it, talk to people, be careful.
If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. If you're thinking of going into cons, I can just tell you, I think without fear of contradiction, it will ruin your life. You may make money, but you will buy that money with love and trust and a happy life. That's a pretty big price to pay.